Hey guys, Duke here, and today I want to talk about something I'm kinda late to the party on, Charged with Light mods. Full disclosure, I personally had never looked into nor used these mods until a few days ago, when I decided I wanted to learn more about how they worked and try to get a feeling on if they were worth it or not. And I have to say, there are some really cool and really strong potential builds using these mods. One thing I noticed as well is it can be extremely confusing to be able to find all the mods and figure out what each one does, so I'm going to try to talk about them in a super simple and organized way in this video. At the end of each section, I will also add any quick thoughts, suggestions, or tips I have on their uses. If you have been using Charged with Light mods since they came out, you will probably already know much of this information, but if you are like me and have found them to be a bit overwhelming to look into, this video is for you. Here's a few baseline facts about Charged with Light. 1. You start with the ability to have 2 stacks of Charged with Light, and get a max of 5 if using certain mods that we will talk about a bit later. 2. You cannot become Charged with Light if you do not have something that allows you to use the Charged with Light stacks. And 3. If you die, you lose all stacks of Charged with Light. As I mentioned, I'm going to split this video into easy to understand sections. Part 1 will be ways to become Charged with Light, while Part 2 will talk about the things you can do with the Charged with Light mechanic or amplify it. The first 3 mods I will be talking about all include ways to become Charged with Light and can be used on any affinity armor type. Those mods are Taking Charge, Shield Break Charge, and Empowered Finish. Taking Charge allows you to become Charged with Light when picking up Orbs of Light. This works with both orbs created from Super, as well as Masterworked orbs, and is one of the most simple and consistent ways to get access to the Charged with Light mechanic. Next is Shield Break Charge. This mod allows you to become Charged with Light when breaking a shield of an enemy with the matching energy type. When you are fighting things that actually have shields, and assuming you have the correct damage type, this is an extremely powerful way to get Charged with Light up often. Activities such as the Whisper and 0 Hour would be insane with this mod, but sadly both activities are being sunset. Nonetheless, if something pops up in the future with a lot of shields, keep this mod in mind, but until then, it's more often going to be worthless. The third and final mod for this section is Empowered Finish. This mod allows you to become Charged with Light by using your finisher at the cost of 1/10 of your super. This is another consistent way to become Charged with Light, but you do lose super energy to do so, and you will also not be able to use your finisher, nor become Charged with Light if you have less than 1/10 of your super available. This section of mods will continue to talk about ways to become Charged with Light. However, for this section, your armor will require a specific Void, Solar, or Arc affinity, depending on the mod. We will start with the Void affinity mods, which are Precisely Charged, Precision Charge, and Charge Harvester. Precisely Charged allows you to become Charged with Light by getting multiple rapid precision final blows with linear fusion rifles or sniper rifles. This one is way too specific as well as challenging to pull off compared to some of our other options to be considered useful, and not only that, it also costs you 10 discipline to your overall stats. Precision Charge allows you to become Charged with Light again with rapid precision kills, but this time from bows, hand cannons, and scout rifles, at a cost of a 10 strength stat penalty. If you're a hand cannon lover, or if scouts ever get some love again, this may have some use for you, but again it feels more difficult compared to some of the better options. At least this one doesn't require special or heavy ammo kills though, so it does have that going for it. Finally, we have Charge Harvester. This mod allows kills or assists with anything to give you a small and increasing chance to become Charged with Light. Through a small amount of testing, it seems like I was able to get Charged with Light in about 5 kills pretty consistently, which is actually quite good. And the fact that you can use or do anything to become charged is a huge benefit. There are 2 downsides though. The first is you lose 10 to whatever stat is connected to your class ability. Mobility for Hunters, Recovery for Warlocks, and Resilience for Titans. Secondly, you can only ever get a one-time stack with this mod, due to it only working when you are not already Charged with Light. I don't have enough experience with this mod to say for sure one way or another, but my feeling is that there will almost always be better ways to become Charged with Light with less drawbacks. Next we have the Solar affinity mods, Blast Radius, Sustained Charge, and Incinerating Light. Blast Radius allows you to become Charged with Light by getting rapid kills with grenade launchers or rocket launchers. Had I used this Charged with Light system more this season, this mod with Mountaintop would have almost certainly been my choice for one of the best, if not the best option to use. However, with Mountaintop being sunset, we'll have to see how next season plays out. Truth Teller and Wither Horde are 2 potentially very strong options, as well as potentially the new Salvation's Grip grenade launcher mentioned in the Beyond Light calendar, not to mention possible use of Anarchy, Behringer's Memory, or Swarm of the Raven in the heavy slot. Sustained Charge lets you become Charged with Light through rapid defeats of enemies using auto rifles, trace rifles, or machine guns. In our current meta, this is an absolute top-tier choice, with not only autos such as Gnawing Hunger and Summoner being so strong, but Xenophage also being a staple as a quote machine gun in many of our builds. We'll have to see what next season brings to see if this option stays so strong. Considering Light uses the Warmind Cell mechanic as well, and by destroying multiple enemies with a Warmind Cell explosion, you become charged with Light. However, this obviously requires a Warmind Cell build in the first place. I just wanted to mention it here as an option in case you happen to already be running a Warmind Cell build. Finally, we have the Arc Affinity mods: Quick Charge, Swift Charge, and Warmind's Light. The Arc Affinity mods are different in that they all have secondary perks that activate when at least one Arc-specific mod is slotted into the same armor piece. This effect is usually pretty easy to achieve by even just using a 1 energy cost mod, and many of the secondary perks are quite strong, and in some cases even better than the main mod effect itself. Quick Charge allows you to become charged with light by rapidly defeating enemies with fusion rifles and shotguns. Its secondary perk greatly increases the ready speed of fusion rifles and shotguns as well as submachine guns and swords. If you are using this mod for its main effect, the additional effect affecting fusions and shotguns is a nice secondary bonus. Swift Charge allows you to become charged with light with rapid defeats from pulse rifles, sidearms, or machine guns. If you are specifically using pulse rifles, the additional effect allows you to have a chance to drop special ammo for your allies with getting kills with your pulse rifle. Again, this is a nice additional effect for something you are going to be doing anyway, but isn't necessarily something I would suggest, quote, dropping everything for to force into your build. Warmind's Light requires Warmind cells, but again, in the name of being as thorough as possible, I am including it. This mod gives you charge with light whenever you pick up a Warmind cell. Now that you know all the ways you can become charged with light, what can you do with those stacks? Part 2 of the guide will now talk about all the effects you can gain while under the charge with light buff. The only non-affinity specific mod to talk about here is High Energy Fire. This mod gives you a 20% bonus to weapon damage and takes away 1 stack of charge with light on a kill. This mod can be very strong against tanky enemies, or if you are able to consistently become charged with light. The downside of this mod is it does not stack with things like Well of Radiance or Weapons of Light, which limits its effectiveness heavily for straight DPS, but it is still quite strong in non-pure boss DPS scenarios. There are 5 void mods that allow you to amplify yourself in some way under the charge with light effect. They are Protective Light, Extra Reserves, Stacks on Stacks, Surprise Attack, and Energy Converter. Let's start with Protective Light. In my opinion, this is the gold standard for charge with light mods and is an absolute A+ must-use mod. The specifics of this mod are as follows. If you are charged with light and your health hits red, aka your shields are destroyed, you gain 50% damage reduction from anywhere between 6 to 20 seconds, depending on how many stacks of charge with light you had at the time. You also lose your stacks when this effect procs. Even at 6 seconds, this effect is nutty, and so incredibly strong for any PvE activity in which dying is bad. Here's a hint, that's all of them. You do have a loss of 10 strength for using this mod, but strength isn't an overly useful stat as is, and even if it was, this effect is well worth it. Extra Reserves allows kills with void damage to have a chance to drop special ammo, and when procced will remove all stacks of charge with light. Honestly, this effect seemed pretty bad in testing, and with things like Scavengers, Finders, and Special Ammo Finisher, seems unnecessary. On top of all that, you also lose 10 intellect by using this mod, so I give this one a hard pass. Stacks on Stacks gives you an extra stack for every stack of charge with light that you gain. In other words, you get 2 stacks every time you would normally get 1. This can be good and increase uptime for things that are consistently using your stacks, such as High Energy Fire, but isn't a mod that does anything on its own. You will also lose 10 recovery for using this mod, and with recovery being one of the best PvE options, it definitely hurts. Surprise Attack uses your stacks and converts them into a huge damage buff for sidearms. This damage buff is a 2x damage buff, and some people have found success when pairing it with the Devil's Rune exotic sidearm, but in most cases this mod feels too gimmicky to be efficient. It is certainly a fun way to spice things up though, and if you are on an all-out sidearms fanatic, could have some use for you. Don't forget it will also drop your intellect by 10, so keep that in mind as well. The last void mod to talk about is Energy Converter. When first reading this mod's effect, I got super excited about it. In use, however, it seems okay at best and quite bad at worst. This mod allows you to use your grenade and in return get super energy based on how many stacks of charge with light you have. In order to get any use out of it, you will have to have some of the extra stacks mod I will be talking about later, but at just 1 or 2 stacks it gives almost no super energy. At 5 stacks though, it gave around 40% super. However, the problem is the last part of this mod's description. Quote, up to a maximum of 50% of your super energy. When I first read that, I thought it meant that at max stacks I would get 50% super energy. Nope. What that actually means is no matter how much super you are currently at, this mod will never get you higher than 50% of your super bar. So if you're at 45% super and have 5 stacks, you will still only get to 50% super total. In other words, the only real use case for this is to have 5 stacks of Charge with Light, use your super, and immediately use your grenade to get 40% of your super back. Maybe in a DPS situation with Golden Gun, or right after popping a bubble as you get your grenade back anyway when using your super, but not as cool as I thought it was going to be. I was so excited about the potential to pair this with the Benevolent Dawn perk, as well as Phoenix Protocol, and have complete and total infinite uptime on Wall of Radiance. But that would probably also be extremely broken. So with that in mind, this mod disappointed me. You also get less grenades overall due to the loss of 10 discipline for using it. On to the Solar mods. Solar has 6 mods to choose from, which are Heal Thyself, Firepower, Charged Up, Supercharged, Argent Ordnance, and Kindling the Flame. Heal Thyself heals you when getting a final blow with a grenade at the cost of 1 stack of Charge with Light. This mod was a bit hard to test, but it sure seemed to give a very insignificant amount of healing when getting the kill. At the cost of your grenade, it did not seem worth it, especially as someone that mains Warlock and can use grenades to heal in much stronger ways without a mod, such as healing grenades and Devour. Firepower returns a portion of your grenade energy when using a grenade, again coming at a cost of 1 Charge with Light stack. This effect was extremely insignificant, as it gave somewhere around 15 to 20% of my grenade back after using it. The next 2 mods I'm going to pair up are Charged Up and Supercharged. Charged Up allows for 1 additional stack of Charge with Light above the base 2 that you get, while Supercharged allows for 2 additional stacks. Like I mentioned briefly earlier, for any effects such as High Energy Fire that you may be needing a lot of continuous uptime on stacks, or if you want to mess around with some of the mods that are based around how many stacks you have, these are very strong options and potentially necessities. As noted on Supercharged, the most amount of stacks that you can have is 5, so you can either use 3 copies of Charged Up, or 1 copy of Supercharged and 1 copy of Charged Up to hit that cap of 5. The second option requires only 2 pieces of armor, but Supercharged does come at a 5 energy cost instead of the 2 costs of Charged Up, so it will depend on what other mods you are looking to use in order to create your most effective build. Also note that at the moment, exotics don't have a slot for these mods, so if you choose the 3 copy option, you will not be able to use an exotic as you will still need 1 armor piece that allows you to become Charged with Light, which would be your 4th total, and then your 5th total armor piece will be your Charge with Light, quote, effect. I do believe Bungie stated that in Beyond Light, exotics will have this slot though, so that may open up this option. Argent Ordnance's description doesn't exactly explain how it works correctly, at least not in any way that I could understand it as. The way it actually works is as if you are Charged with Light and pull out a rocket launcher, you will get a buff called Godslayer Warheads immediately, which gives your next rocket a 20% damage boost. Extra copies of Argent Ordnance actually do stack, but not additively and seem to cap out at 35% damage. This mod also does not stack with Well or Weapons of Light. With rockets not being in a super strong place at the moment, this mod doesn't really do anything extra for them. But going forward, if rockets were to ever become strong at clearing out tanky enemies maybe, this mod could be worth re-looking into. Just like with High Energy Fire though, the lack of stacking ability with DPS supers limits its upside greatly. The final solar mod to talk about is Kindling the Flame. This mod heals you when you revive a teammate and consumes 1 stack of Charge with Light. I really don't know where this would be useful. Maybe in a GM where your teammate got themselves in a bad spot and you barely got the res off or something and the extra healing gave you time to get away. I feel that any mod that requires someone else to die to have any effectiveness, and pretty limited and specific effectiveness at that, is probably not a mod that I would build around. Finally, we have the Arc Affinity mods. These are Striking Light, Heavy Handed, Powerful Friends, Lucent Blade, Reactive Pulse, and Radiant Light. As with the earlier Arc mods, these also have unique and potentially very strong secondary effects when slotting an Arc mod on the armor you are using them on. Striking Light spawns 1 orb of light for your teammates when you defeat an enemy with a melee or a sword at the cost of 1 Charge with Light stack. In testing, this orb seemed to not be a full, quote, super-like orb, and gave a very limited amount of super back. This mod's secondary effect gives damage resistance against combatants while sprinting. I feel that there's definitely a solid opportunity for use of this mod for its secondary effect alone. Something similar to the Crota's End opening encounter in Destiny 1, assuming you could actually sprint in it, would be a great for something like this. In essence, anything where you're moving a lot while fighting and or avoiding a multitude of enemies could make use of this effect. Next is Heavy-Handed. This mod gives you half of your melee energy back when using a charged melee at the cost of 1 stack of Charge with Light. For PvE purposes, I don't find any melee effects overly strong, other than the smoke grenade on hunters, but they already have a built-in way to get that back. However, the secondary effect is again worth looking into. This effect gives you ammo back directly to your reserves when surrounded by multiple enemies and killing an enemy with a fusion rifle, shotgun, sidearm, or submachine gun. I'm looking at this mostly for the special ammo potential, and while it only gives 1 shot back to your reserves per kill, that alone could theoretically lead to infinite ammo. Not only that, but if you were to say use 2 shotguns, a shotgun and a fusion rifle, or 2 fusion rifles, you actually get ammo back to both weapons when getting a kill. Sadly, this does not give ammo back to heavy if using something like Acreus, but it is still quite unique and useful. Powerful Friends allows nearby allies to become charged with light when you become charged with light, if they are not already. While I do think this actually has some potential uses, most people know of and use this mod for its secondary perk as well, which is plus 20 mobility. Especially on hunters that have their dodge cooldown paired with their total mobility, this perk is outstanding. Loosened Blade allows your sword to do bonus damage for 5 seconds after dealing damage with the sword, consuming 1 stack of Charge with Light. Once again, this does not stack with DPS super buffs, but if you're using it against multiple tanky enemies, can be quite nasty. On top of that, its secondary perk speeds up the charge rate of swords, which is the heavy attack. The heavy and the current best sword, Falling Guillotine, does huge damage in an AoE spin, but is being brought down some in Beyond Light. But this is still a great bonus perk to have, as its spin will still do quite a lot of damage going forward. Reactive Pulse makes a small burst of damaging arc energy around you when you take damage, consuming 1 stack. This pulse's range is not great, and its damage is minuscule and only really useful against weak red bar enemies that would most likely be easy to kill anyway. The additional effect gives you a powerful overshield when using a finisher, emphasis on wow, because the shield goes away just about immediately after finishing the finisher animation, and therefore it loses a lot of its potential effectiveness. Finally, we have Radiant Light. This mod allows for casting your super to cause nearby allies to become charged with light. This is a mod that I think could be outstanding for a dedicated team in raids or other high-end activities that can be communicated and all be using Charge with Light builds. Something as simple as popping your super before even starting a raid encounter, then grabbing a raid flag could allow everyone to start off with multiple Charge with Light stacks, going into the encounter very easily and efficiently. There's also a plus 20 strength bonus as a secondary perk, which probably isn't a huge deal, but is purely a benefit, even if it's a small one. And there we have it, every Charge with Light mod explained in a relatively organized and concise fashion for those of you who have been too scared to dip your toes into this really cool and unique mod set. If you enjoyed the video, please consider dropping a like and subbing to the channel if you are new. Also, leaving a comment with feedback, both good and bad, is always appreciated so I can make my future videos better for you. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.